states.
Okay, so before I get like burned at the stake, Jake Sherman, I would like to remind everyone that there were some things I said about the Clinton campaign that did bore out to be true, and it pertains to the Democratic Party as a whole. Jake Sherman, try and explain to me why I watched the rally yesterday, and while I am totally with them, and I understand what they're upset about, and I feel the way they do, I didn't feel like this was where we needed to be. Is there anything that you can glean from what I'm saying? If not, I'll go to Howard Dean.
That's a tough choice. He ran for president and ran the party, so he probably knows a little bit better. That being said, I don't think Democrats have kind of come to grips with the fact that they are in the extremely deep minority in the House, the minority in the Senate, and they're operating by an old playbook, which is kind of at this point becoming frayed and tattered, and I think we saw that last night. Donald Trump pointed out on Twitter this morning that the microphone didn't work at the rally, which is true momentarily.
Yeah.
It was quite embarrassing, but that's okay. But this party has not really moved on from 2006, and I can't tell you how many Democrats that I talked to on Capitol Hill want change and want it now in the leadership on Capitol Hill. But I would defer to the former DNC chairman to render judgments on his party.
So Mika, so you look at that, you look at the protests, you look at everything that's going on right now. And again, the question that has to be asked is, like, for instance, West Haven, a place you know in Connecticut.
Oh, yeah.
For Barack Obama by 20 points. I had a representative there tell me it went for Trump by 20 points. There is a county, Tom Perez, when he was here, said there's a county in the middle of Iowa that was plus 21 for Obama. This year it was plus 21 for Trump. It reminds me of Howard Dean's 50-state strategy.
Right.
I mean, they've got to figure out how to get out of the old mode and start speaking to some of these communities.
And also, Howard, I'm trying to get my arms around why I watched that. I literally said that I just feel that they're overreaching. And I think it's because there are some basic things here that are bearing out, where you just got to let the opposing side actually trip, which they're doing beautifully.
So what are you saying? I'm confused.
Well, first of all, there are Muslim countries that are not included in this band. There are clearly some growing pains that are going to bear out in the coming week, that are going to show the Trump administration to be extremely inexperienced at best in this travel ban, and yet they're out there acting as if people are being killed and it's, you know, a slaughter. I know that this is going to be criticized.
Are Democrats overreaching?
But I had an instinctive feeling about it.
So there's two things going on here. One is something that always happens is with the politicians in Washington are always behind where their base is. These folks are, I'd be a little harsh to say they hadn't learned anything since 2006, but they are not where the base is. This is one of the extraordinary things about this election has not been discussed, which is for the first time the young people in this country are really mobilized to consider an institutional, joining an institution. They all voted for Obama because he was like them, he was multicultural and so forth. But they're not Democrats.
Right.
Today, they're now working for the Democrats. There's a website that was just put up, and they got 250,000 people to agree to swing left, and they got 1,000 people to agree to run for office. Now, this is unorganized and disorganized, but it's young people for the first time understanding that institutions matter.
Right.
Because what Trump's election is a negation of every single value that somebody under 35 in this country has. They value diversity, they value inclusion, they value pragmatic discussion. They can't stand the dialogue that's going on in Washington because it's always taking blowtorches to each other.
Howard,
that's not where the politicians are yet, but they're going to have to learn to get there because that's where the base is. Yes.
Get a database.
Exactly.
But Howard, you actually talked, I think it was in 2004? Is that when you started talking about a 50-state strategy?
Yeah, 2004.
I remember you started talking about a 50-state strategy when the Republican Party was at its zenith. Democrats were on the run. I remember there were senators and congressmen that said, no, we're not going to do a 50-state strategy because we don't care what they think about us, basically, in Kansas. And you adopted that. Well, Democrats have to do that again.
Yes, they do.
Let's look at the big things that have happened. We've seen protests at the airports. We've seen other protests over the past week and a half. And yes, that will energize progressives.
Absolutely wonderful.
But how does it speak to that county in Iowa that was
how do we win?
That was plus 21 Obama, and this year went plus 21
You show
Trump.
up. That's what, look, I'm not blaming Obama for this because every president does this. When you have an elected president, the party becomes the re-elect and everything else withers. You can't do that. We needed to be in Iowa. If you let Rush Limbaugh give the Democratic messages in Iowa, guess who's going to win Iowa? And that's what we essentially did by not investing in counties. You have to invest in counties, in state legislatures where the biggest damage is not in the House and the Senate. The biggest damage is in state legislatures. Yeah.
Were any future leaders of the Democratic Party on that stage last night?
Yeah, I think there probably were. I think there's a lot of younger. The other problem is we need a whole new generation to come up, and there's lots of good candidates out there.